We had the plenary session about adaptation and poverty reduction, and you pointed out that it is especially the poor or the most vulnerable people who are suffering from the effects of the climate change. Why is that so?
Well, you see, I showed two maps in my presentation. The first is the hunger map, and the second one is the poverty map. And when you look at the two, most of the poor in the world, they live in some of the most harshest regions in terms of environment. For example, you take the people who live in sub-Saharan Africa. They live in areas where soils are very poor, rainfall is very low, temperatures are very high, water availability is very low. So already they are in a situation, they didn't choose it, they were just born there. So it is not by choice, it is just that they were born there. So we have to understand that they are in areas where climate is already very variable and climate change is already impacting them, and they have to live in those areas where the resources are already very poor. So it's kind of what they say in English, double whammy. On one hand, your circumstances are already very difficult. On the other hand, you have the climate change coming on top of it, where temperatures are now hitting 50 degrees centigrade in some of those countries. Rainfall is already very, very low, and then extreme events are increasing. You have more hurricanes, more cyclones, more floods, and so it's becoming very, very difficult for the poor people to really live and make a living. And so that is what I was pointing out, that maybe in the planet we have to understand the circumstances in which the poor people live. And so we all have to learn to live with less so that other people can live. That's what I said. We have to learn to live with less.
What kinds of adaptation or poverty reduction would you suggest? What can you do against it?
Well, first of all, as I said, at the policy level, we have to understand which are these regions where communities are highly vulnerable already. We understand the reasons for their vulnerability, and then we start addressing those issues one by one. Now, in that, you really cannot address the issue from a single point, but you have to take an integrated approach. So you have to understand all the issues that are related to their poverty, and then how do we address those issues. For example, if you take a subsistence farmer in the sub-Saharan Africa that I mentioned, he has got poor soils, he is cultivating crops that are already giving extremely low yield, he does not apply any fertilizer, he does not have any resource of water for him to apply irrigation and so on. So what do we do? First, we have to educate him that on those poor soils, if he is cultivating a crop, he must apply at least a minimum amount of fertilizer. So I give you one statistic. In Niger in West Africa, average use of fertilizer is 1 kilogram per hectare per year. In Germany, you apply 250 kilograms per hectare per year. So first thing we need to teach those farmers is how do we use small quantities of fertilizer that they can apply on the field so that they can at least get a minimum of yield. Second, once they get the yield, important thing is to be able to create a market where they can get the right price. Oftentimes they work very hard to produce 1 ton of grain, and then there is no good market for them to sell that grain. So that is where the policy comes in, that you must create a policy environment where the poor farmers get the right price for the small crop that they produce. And third, risk. They are living in a highly risky environment. How do you cover risk? You cover it by insurance. So you must have what is called a risk transfer mechanism, where you create small insurance schemes for the poor farmers. So they pay a very small premium, like maybe $10 in US dollars, or in local currency it could be a small amount. So that covers the risk for him. Suddenly if there's a big storm and he has lost his crop, his risk is covered. So at least he gets some payment back for the risk. So this is how we should approach.
Okay, so you pointed out the insurance, but also the policies. What do you think can the media do, or what role does the media play, maybe also for the local communities that you said should be more integrated into this process?
I think what the media could do is really two things. One, if there is a success story, it's not that everywhere every farmer is failing. There are farmers who work very hard, who are very clever, and who do a good job. So media should publish the success story of these poor farmers who are using innovative techniques and who are making a good living. So those stories should inspire other people who are depressed and who really don't know what to do. So that's where media can play a big role. Second, if there is a real problem with a particular community, media should go there, should understand the problem, and should make this problem visible. Oftentimes communities live where they're not visible, and hence people don't know. It's after something happens to this community, maybe a few hundred children die or some older women die or whatever, then suddenly there is a news. So before these sort of catastrophes occur, the media should already concentrate on where these problems are occurring and bring it to the notice of the public, and more importantly bring it to the notice of the governments which are sitting in the capital city.
Thank you very much. We will try to do our best.